AMC's in a major spot as sellers regain that complete control with 8 red days in a row, pushing us all the way back down to the support level of 283, where we found a little bit of chop getting out of this descending range, as well as the exact point where we kind of found our energy building phase before getting that big movement up to the top of that range, hitting that $4 psychological level. So seeing this steep decline is definitely worrying for the buyers, and should we expect a bounce here and a continued movement up with the buyers regaining that control back? Or is this finally time where sellers get that big movement down, doing what it does best, getting in these longer term descending ranges? As we saw, guys, in this exact long-term resistance, price tapped off that right around that 550 level, creating it. And once it tapped off that, we see something very similar, 7 red days in a row, find a support level, try to hold around there, but then we get further down, continue our movement all the way to that bottom of 245 before we got out of that range and saw that movement to 4. So will this be a similar pattern with us kind of trying to play around the support, try to recover here, but ultimately flush lower, getting below, retesting that 240 and that 260 support level, and possibly going lower from there, creating a longer term descending range, kind of like we saw right here. Now, guys, starting this analysis on the weekly, we see how beat up AMC is. Very, very beat up in the long term, right? This thing has just gone completely destroyed. Had a little bit of momentum in the past, but it's gotten very destroyed. And some may ask, why even cover this stock? Well, there's still a vast amount of people in this thing for long term, as well as there could be some short term opportunity, being the reason why I cover this thing. And first things first, guys, we saw some support at that 240 and that 260 more general level after getting completely crushed. So that's our bottom that we find. And from that bottom, we get pushed up to that $11 level. Obviously can't hold that. And we get pushed down to around that $4 and $5 range, kind of bouncing between those, as well as this descending resistance that we find here. And we get pushed back down, kind of get that double bottom effect. So we bottom here, once here, and now twice, and that's where we see a nice ascending movement up on the weekly. That's where we see a nice ascending movement up. So we find some ascending support. Price starts to react very well after hitting that support level, getting that double bounce, and then we get pushed to that $4 psychological level, retapping on this resistance that we've created. Sellers shut us down a bit right there in some good control here, but buyers do try to escape this range a few times, and on the third attempt, we see that nice movement out, just like we were covering on our latest AMC videos. They get that movement out, and they tap right at that resistance, and that successfully holds up again and pushes price back down. And now we're met right back at the bottom of this descending range, as well as right where price picked up that steam to find that nice movement up to $4. So weekly is pretty self-explanatory, very beat up. After we've gotten that huge attempt to that $11 level, kind of chop between that 4 and 5, but did go back down to the floor, getting that double bottom. Kind of found some life with the stock, but that resistance holds up. Once again, buyers find life breaking this descending channel range. But once we retest, once again, resistance holds up. So should we expect a bounce here, this being a pretty solid support level? Or is this more recent double top of that resistance the main thing that the sellers needed and the catalyst to bring the stock further down, retesting that floor and possibly below that? Now, turning back to the daily, as the weekly is pretty self-explanatory, we see just what's going on here. We want a closer eye view picture. So we did get that tap of that level at that $4 level like we described. This is where we see buyers kind of get that momentum. So first off, sellers in that ultimate control in this descending channel after that movement up. Before that movement, we had a lot of bounce towards the bottom of this range, right? That being that long-term descending range that we looked at there after tapping out that 550. So we kind of build up some energy here. Price is an obvious energy building phase. As we get tighter towards the bottom, this being a solid support level here, then we kind of bleed out of that descending range there. And once we get to the level that we're at right now, see a nice green wide bar up. Buyers really try to see a volatile, aggressive movement. They can't really get that, so we trace back down, but we find the support level and we continue to build that momentum, and then boom, see a very nice move to that $4 level. Can't hold that, so we retrace it. Sellers retrace that entire candle there, kind of seeing a green to red exact mirroring candle. And then we chop around, guys, and we see buyers try to break this descending range once here, twice here, and then the third time was the successful attempt out. That's where you see that candle close over, right? It's not just a wick. See a very small candle close here, but very much indecisive price action, with that being a very small body candle and a prominent upper as well as a lower wick. So we do get pushed down, and that third attempt is successful. Nicer breakout and a very nice movement out of that. Buyers in that ultimate control. So you see that gap up in continuation up. We reclaim that 320. That being the point where we kind of got over that last time and saw that very explosive movement, right? That one day really bringing us around a 20% movement. So that was a very solid day there, guys. So once we get above that range, sellers find a point to push us down. buyers hold up, and then we get pushed to the top of that resistance, that being right around that 350 to 360 level. And then guys, this is the more recent price action. We see 8 red candles in a row, pushing us all the way down to the support level of 283, right where we found that bounce there and that successful attempt out of this descending channel, as well as where we found that movement out and that aggressive movement, kind of building up that energy, then seeing the volatility pick up, as well as the volume as we get that very aggressive movement. So not a good sign, guys, as when we trend back, hitting off that exact resistance, right, when that was created, like we saw at the beginning of the video here, we've gotten something very, very similar. We had that nice movement up, got that rejection, and then we see 7 red candles in a row. Find that support level where they try to hold up, right? But then we get pushed further down. And like we saw, guys, in the big picture of things, AMC is a very beat up stock. This thing has gotten crushed over time and just very prone to going on these long-term sell-offs. Not a lot of buying presence. Kind of in a descending stair-step-like pattern, right? Sellers push us down a lot. Buyers try to chop, find that move up, push us down more. Buyers get a shorter move up, push us down more. Once again, try to get a move up, push us down more. And they'll find these little pockets where they get that volatility and volumes on its side. And we see those aggressive movements up. But in the overall picture, guys, this thing likes to get in these longer term descending ranges. So this right here is a bit steep, as we saw after that first movement up. Steep correction, but then a lot more back and forth on this descending type of range. See a good amount of days in this price action, but once we got that movement out of that range, we hit that resistance once again, that being a very stubborn resistance for the stock as of recent times, and we see incredible selling action, guys. We don't see buyers in control whatsoever. So if we can't get the bounce right here at that 283, we're looking very much prone to that bounce of 260, or that retest, I should say, of 260, and then that retest of 245, that being the very bottom of this range. If we can't get that, guys, we might be headed to the all-time low territory, bringing us to kind of a bad spot for the buyers, once again, for AMC. So we'll have to see if we get the bounce there. If we can't get the bounce there, and we can't get the bounce at the ultimate 260 level, really looking very bearish on AMC, guys. Not looking good. So yeah, bad price action to see for the buyers. Bears looking like they are getting that full control. And that resistance really holding up as a very stubborn resistance. So even if buyers try to get in that, control, try to find that bottom, try to get that bounce, that resistance, guys, is going to be a very stubborn level for the price to try to cross through. You could be looking at a test, right? If buyers did get that bounce, test around that 320, by the time they get there, they'd probably be meeting right back up with that resistance there. So that thing has been very stubborn and led to these big sell-offs. As long as this resistance is in play and buyers can't really blow through that, definitely looking bearish on AMC. If we can't find that bounce here, not looking good for the stock. Looking like we are headed down to that general bottom. Yeah, we'll see, guys, but AMC not looking good on the daily as well as the weekly. We still are in a range, so there's always a point where we could get a bounce here. Kind of standing bearish on this one from the weekly and the daily. All right, guys, now on the hourly chart, what we can see a little bit better here is that break of that descending range, that gap up, find a little bit of chop around the top of that range, right above that 324. Get pushed down, but we hold higher, hitting around that 310 level. Then we get that push up right to that resistance, and once again, cannot hold that resistance. We try to test it a couple times here if you look at the closer eye view picture. So 2 real attempts, and we just can't get back up to that range again. Sellers pushing us lower and lower. That's where you see that big decline as that resistance holds up once again. And really no buyer presence. I mean, on the hourly, you see how much these sellers are in that control. No buyer presence after this attempt to get that movement out. That holding as a very strong resistance still. Hit the bottom, we see a little bit of buying pressure, showing that that support still is quite strong, but we can't build a base here and start making a move up, start getting the buyers in control, getting a nice move up, lower retracement, bigger move up, lower retracement. If we can't start getting a base and a good pattern forming here, guys, we're definitely looking bearish from the hourly, daily, and weekly. We still remain quite bearish on this. Not looking good here, guys, especially considering that once we tapped off that resistance like we saw something very similar, right? Found that support, so we could be chopping, could be creating price action just like we saw here. Find a very obvious support. Could be trying to chop for a few days, but still, even if we did chop, if we don't get a nice aggressive movement up, I think that we still get that movement down. I think that in the shorter term, we see 260 get hit. So let me know your price predictions, both short and long term. Not looking great here in the short term. If we get a bounce here or at that 260, could be building up that momentum again and seeing some short term nice price action. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Let me know if you want me to keep covering AMC. Pretty skeptical. I mean, if this stock keeps going down and to the dumps, I don't really see a lot of point of covering this. I know some of you guys are long-term investors as well as short-term investors, but let me know in the comments if you guys want to keep seeing the AMC content. Just not looking good here. Very bad price action, but we will see what happens with the next few weeks to come. See if we get a bounce here. Stay in the game, kind of retesting that resistance, or if we're headed to the bottom here, where that'd be kind of the all-time low area. So guys, stay patient on this one. See how it develops. And as always, trade smart. I'll see you all in the next one.